Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or mostly Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative to a binary system.
MOTS!
This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to Bon Mots. Today we are delving fully into Oscar season Best Picture with the critically acclaimed and fantastic movie Moonlight. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Rich Perry.
Good evening.
Louis Duran.
Hello.
And Scott Thurlow.
How's it going?
So, we're going to skip over a funny log line because we've all deemed it kind of mildly inappropriate. Any kind
this
of
movie is beyond us doing funny log lines for it.
Yeah, and if we did, they would be sophomoric at best. So I'll go into the synopsis of the film. It follows the pain and tragedy of both a young black man growing up in America and a young gay man growing up in America.
Mm.
And combining them together
the
is
same
just,
person, yes.
Yes. Combining them together is just pure Oscar gold. Anyway, without further ado, we'll go on to the introduction with Scott Thurlow.
All right, so this movie is actually, the movie tells us how to cut it up. It's literally in 3 acts. So I guess I'll mention this here. I was waiting to kind of mention it. This movie and Fences, I think, are two of the best movies I've seen all year, especially for the Oscar noms, even within that.
Would agree.
And they were both based on plays, correct? Originally, like, basically adapted from a play to a movie. I think that might be a new trend because when done well, it makes a fucking amazing movie. So yeah, so Act 1 essentially is called Little, and you follow the life of, you find out his name is Sharon, but his nickname as a kid, he's bullied. I think even if he doesn't know he's gay, it seems as if the other kids at school are, like, bullying him because of that. So, like, that's part of his life. He's essentially sort of outcast from home and school. And you follow him basically trying to just survive being in that state and trying to live, like, be a normal life. His mother also is a drug addict. So she's raising him alone. So he comes across a abandoned house and is found by a man named Juan, who is actually the local sort of kingpin himself. So that he befriends Little / Sharon and his girl, I guess, Teresa also. They become basically his second parents, and it's quickly apparent to them, or it becomes apparent enough that he in fact is gay and is struggling with that, while also just struggling to live his own life with the family life, like I just said. So it's all very tense and very dramatic, but so well done, so well acted by everybody involved, and so believable that I think it's an immediately arresting intro. It definitely got me into it.
What's interesting is Sharon, or Little as they call him in this act, he's a very reticent individual.
Yes, taciturn, if you will.
Yeah, laconic, if you will. And they...
Tisk. Go on.
And it's so interesting to see this character, Juan, who both cares for this kid. I guess he sees a little bit of himself in Sharon, and he is trying to be like a father figure that the kid doesn't have. But he's also the one responsible for his mother's drug addiction. And I actually think that as much as it's a character study of Sharon, this act in particular is a character study of Juan.
Oh yeah,
and
I definitely agree.
And the repercussions of dealing drugs in this environment.
I would say it is the only act that he's in, and that I think we mentioned this prior to doing the podcast, that it was such a short-lived, really good performance that kind of made his character stand out.
Sure,
but I mean, it was long though. It was like 50 minutes, I think, and then they kind of cut him out. But yeah, it was definitely a character study. I mean, for me, unbeknownst to me, I thought that after seeing the intro, I thought Juan was going to be, kind of the main character, like going side by side with Sharon. But no, I guess they killed him off.
Yeah, if not a main character, but have a bigger part than what he eventually got in the movie.
Yeah,
sure. But I think so. Like you said, Ian, that still informs like who Sharon is as a person, and I think it's set up very well in the intro. So I'm giving it a very strong 1.
I am as well, particularly for the performance of.
Yes, all
Hold
of it.
on one moment.
Go ahead.
Mahershala Ali, who I loved him in Luke Cage, and he
We all did as well.
really sold me as in his performance for the first act. He did a phenomenal job. He took a character that it was a strong character, but he elevated it beyond to what is necessary, as we'll discuss later on, to leave this lasting shadow over this child's life, and then his lasting shadow over this movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't add anything more. Just very high praise. It was a great introduction, and I loved it.
What do you guys
I
give it?
agree.
1.
Yeah, 1.
Okay, and Louis, onto the body with you.
Okay, so I mentioned Juan's death is kind of where you're kind of introduced into the body. It was just titled Sharon, and from there we kind of pick up that everything's kind of progressing for the worse. This kind of seems obviously like the lowest moment in Sharon's life. When you see his mom go further into addiction. Apparently, she's doing favors for money and crack and all that.
Sure.
But everything starts coming around. Kevin gets involved a little more. That relationship from the beginning, because he was the guy that kind of
He was his only friend.
He
I
was
forgot to mention
right?
that.
Yeah, so having Kevin also come in there, it's a small flame and just like all the shadow that's being cast on his life.
I like that description. Exactly.
So that kind of culminates too. So it kind of, the bullying and everything like that also is another thing that kind of nail on the head. And it resonated with me. That's something that I kind of experienced. So I'd say, I don't know, not much really else to say. After that, he hits Terrell with a chair, and he gets sent
One of the
to
bullies that is
Atlanta. Obviously the Moonlight scene, which with Kevin, I kind of overlooked, but
sure, it's there, and it's a progression of their character and their relationship.
Yeah, I don't know if we cover this, but the first act is really when he's 8 years old or so,
8 to 10, maybe
some kind of
12.
youngish. This is his high school years, and it has that kind of extreme version of the standard high school thing with the bully, with the first romance, and it ends up, unfortunately, in prison, and with a very cathartic moment with him beating up the guy who's bullying him, or not beating him, hitting him with a chair, and then wailing on him.
Yeah,
but this it's a at his highest, at the time he actually fights back, he's punished the most for that.
Sure. Yep, and that's where it cuts up. And this entire movie is pretty powerful, I would say, is a word I'm going to use. And the body was, because it cuts up, like you said, early childhood and high school, and then the third act will be his adult years. But it's all perfectly balanced, and it's all tense as hell, and so well acted that you're, riveted, again, to the screen the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I'm going to give it definitely a strong 1.
Yeah,
pretty sure this is going to get a 10, so just spoiler, but we'll say why it's so good. Exactly why what's so good.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about what I could give a 0 to, but I don't know if I could. But anyway, on to conclusion with me. Now we fast forward again. We do another time jump. I think 10,
about 10,
15 years
maybe
in the future.
15 tops. Yeah, sure.
Sharon, this is entitled Black, which is the nickname that Kevin had given to him, and it's kind of, in a sense, he's personified that aspect. There's a thing that Juan's character is actually nicknamed Blue. So you have the Blue and they have Black. He has become Juan at this point, a drug dealer, kind of kingpin in Atlanta, and I mean, it is down to the details. He has become the only male figure that had ever showed him respect in this entirety of his life, or at least that we saw on screen.
Exactly.
And he gets a call from Kevin out of the blue, and he heads down back to Miami. He makes a pit stop to his mother, who's now in a...
I think she's a rehabilitation center or something like that.
That. But anyway, she's doing better, and they have a touching moment of forgiveness. And he rekindles his romance with Kevin, and it ends on a high note of, for everything that went wrong in his life, and Kevin also has kind of a tragic story to him. everything is. There's at least hope for the
There's
future.
some moment of happiness, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it was a very fitting conclusion where it ended, and it kind of a full circle on many different fronts. So I'm going to give it a 1 for this.
I don't have much more to add if you guys do. Go ahead.
1.
Everything you said is perfectly accurate, and I agree fully, and definitely a very strong 1.
Okay, so we're done with conclusion and are on to themes with Rich.
Themes. So going off of what you were talking about with Juan, like we have a father figure that inserts himself into Sharon's life and basically gives him the first bit of comfort with coming to terms with who he is as a person. And you see him like give him the strength to keep it going into his teenage years, where he continues his friendship with Kevin, who's like also been this driving force with him, pretty much to help him go along. I want to take time to like go with what I was speaking about before cast, where I'm under the impression that like Juan may or may not have been gay as well, with the way that he came at Sharon with when he got into that argument with his mother. And she called him a faggot, and he asked him what it was. He's like, "Oh, it's the derogatory term that you
to make gay people feel bad."
Yeah, to make gay people feel bad. And it like goes off of when he talks to him about when he comes to him and for the first time about like who he possibly could be, and then he talks about the Moonlight and how that. Or the older woman that like said the phrase to him, it's like, "Oh, you boys like messing around the moonlight, you look blue."
Yeah, like the thing is, like, so yes, we had this discussion of briefly precast that I think it's open ended enough that you can get that out of it or not. But I don't know, like, I think the movie does such a good job.
It's very like it's very much either way.
It's subtle as hell if it's there,
because
but it can be there.
when he brings up when he brings up his mother calling him a faggot. It's just like, "Am I a faggot?" And like the look on his face was just like, no, you're not. It's almost like he's kind of asking him at the same time, like, do you have these? Yeah,
sure.
Do you have these same urges? Do you identify as this? And he's like, no. And then he looks at his girlfriend Teresa, and like she kind of gives him like the half nod, the go ahead to go along with like his explanation for why both him and Sharon are not.
Sure.
May I even
build
pretension on top of that?
Go for it.
The fact is that you're dealing with a masculine culture here. Whether you want to do with just the kind of, in general, how Americans view the homosexuality, or if you want to particularly delve into like African American views on homosexuality, which is even, I think, harsher than in the general. But the idea is that Juan would have come from a generation where he has to hide it so well,
exactly. And that's where I was kind of drawing that from, because how hard he attacked that question with his answer.
So I mean, he could have been more liberal-minded about it, or he could have been having had to suppress that. But I think that either interpretation works for this movie.
Yeah, I think the fact that you can get both out if you want to, and they both work still perfectly well, is big credit to it.
And I would like to, for a moment, build upon that kind of like masculine thing, because the two confirmed homosexual characters in this are Sharon and Kevin. And it's interesting how they approach society's view of homosexuality, where Kevin kind of goes with the hiding in a straight man's body, having a child. But it never makes him happy.
Sure.
And it was only happy with Sharon there. Sharon goes hyper-masculine. And he's actually a very sensitive kid through most of this.
That's a good point.
But when faced with, he becomes like...
Well, he's like, I would even argue that he's still a sensitive male in the third act. Especially like when he's like, when he pulls that kid off the streets and like talks about how you can't let somebody punk you. It's like, if you can't take that, like people talking shit about you, like you're not going to make it far.
Sure.
But again, I think that, you're absolutely right. And it's about the masks they chose to wear, because Sharon does the intimidating, the black nickname, like the hardcore gangster kind of aspect, where in a sense Kevin's wearing the mask of, like, when you first introduced to Kevin in the teenage years, he's talking about how he's such a ladies' man, and he's
and he's going harder than like Sharon is later on as an adult.
Sure.
So it's
I think they're mirrors in a sense to each other, but showing two different viewpoints and styles of like how to deal with what their situation actually is. So
I actually think this is a very important movie for. We actually did a Neophytes in Narratology cast about how movies can influence cultures by normalizing things, and I think that this is a very important discussion about normalizing, in a sense, like homosexuality, and about
completely agree.
In certain cultures that beforehand hadn't been attempted. So again, I think the themes in this are not only well done but are very important.
Yes, I said they're tackling a lot of like high, important, tricky-ish things that are, of course, contained in society, but often are not addressed, at least definitely not as well as this does.
Sorry, I just thought of another thing. You also have a number of different aspects of like the drug culture. You have the idea of like who influences you in life and what type of person you become by the people who treated you well. Like Juan, he's a very sympathetic character, and I think actually one of the highlights of this film.
For sure.
And in a sense, he had, like, yes, for everything good he did for the character Sharon, he also made him into a drug dealer in a certain way, or at least offered him that lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say like that wasn't his intent at all. Like, he wanted him to have a better life,
he wanted the
but at the same time,
sure,
he was such a comfort and a guiding light to who he could possibly be, that was the only thing that that's the only path that he could possibly take.
Exactly. And that's what, of course, like, there's a large aspect of the tragic angle to it, but still.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to say too, that it's also kind of the society around him. I mean, one of the first places of safety, if you will, was literally a crack den. And he picks up syringes, like,
sure.
He had to be pulled out of it. Like, he actually felt safe there, which is kind of really, it was very bizarre for me. Like,
sure. I mean,
visually, I was like,
dark
shit. Like, it's very, it's quite dark.
But yeah, it's affecting for sure. We can say that, and I will definitely give this movie all the credit in the world, especially like even amongst the things it does well. Themes is probably up there with how it handles it.
Oh, absolutely. So we're on to antagonist with Scott.
All right. So sort of like as Louis just sort of segued me into, it's basically society, but beyond that, society's prejudices and like both that like outwardly and inwardly trying to like live in the culture you're brought up in, like how you're in quotes supposed to act and be, and within that, even if that's not against, if you yourself are discovering not that it's too constraining, or it's just you're discovering things about yourself and it's oppressive upon you to be forced to try to like you said, Ian, wear the mask, even though like you're someone else really in the end. So I think it's both of those, and if you guys got anything more, like, I'll leave it open. But for me, those are probably the most antagonistic elements in this film, and they are very, I think, as far as I, in my experience, true-ish enough life to it. Like, it was very believable, and it wasn't like hitting you over the head really, but it was just like, this is a situation, time and a place, and this is the characters are like, and this is what's happening. So I think it did a very good job of that as well, for sure.
All of the, even if you want to view just Sharon, or you want to include like Kevin and other people, they're living hard enough lives as it is, without having
this other layer,
layer that is making it almost impossible to live within their like a happy life. All right. Well, I'm
I was going to say, could they possibly get a happy life out of that?
But
could they?
I think they.
As best
what
they could, I guess. Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, like, but I don't know.
Whoever
I think
really lives a happy life.
It's a fair enough point.
Life itself is the antagonist here.
Yeah,
in a specific way.
I think it definitely should be life. It puts. Imagine every important moment of your life in a movie and cramming that in an hour 51 minutes.
Sure.
Like, yeah, it's going to be a little heavy.
And here's the thing is, I think it's a really effective antagonist because I actually felt that little glimmer of hope they have at the end was a victory considering everything they faced.
Sure. It's all relative and in context, and I definitely agree with that.
There was a certain amount of victory in every single act that ended.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah,
because you have especially in the first act, like he finds hope within Juan as like his father figure, and in the middle one when he has a cathartic victory against his bully, and like proves to, I guess, what turned out to be the love of his life. Like, I don't blame you for what happened. I blame him. And I've got revenge for the both of us. For him forcing you to do that, and for me taking that beating.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And then, of course, at the end, when it's just the two of them cuddling together.
Yeah, it is the most intense rom-com I've ever
Okay. I can't even really call it a rom-com, though. It's like, there's very little comedy in this.
You're trying to make some levity to this.
I was reading the com.
I got you. But no, I'm definitely giving it a 1. It's, like I said, there's nothing this movie mishandles, and it addresses everything in the best way.
All right, on Louis, on to protagonist with you.
All right, so, I mean, Sharon, obviously, we see him go through 3 different phases in his life, but I kind of feel like every character that's on screen, we get a very rich history. Although we don't see it, and we especially don't see it with Sharon, where we kind of just breeze through a decade of being in prison, where you think,
that might be some
life-changing
experience.
Something in there, especially because he goes hard, but we're not seeing his true self. So we're finally come back to the moment where he's going to have a cathartic moment. But I wanted to say, like, his mom had, really crazy trajectory. I mean, obviously, like a druggy one, but at the end, finally kind of getting some sort of redemption.
Sure.
Who else? Teresa, sadly don't hear too much from her,
but like you said, like, I think you understood, like, that nature of
Kevin
her
also,
yeah.
Yeah, Kevin we see in all 3 acts as well.
Yeah,
he has, like I said, a rich history.
Teresa's there to play a comparison role to his mother.
Yeah, sure, of course. But she does a good job of it. Like, it makes sense and everything. Yeah.
In fact, I think that her and Juan were the most interesting characters, and they had the most
secondaries coming up. But
I'm just saying, like, but for protagonists,
sure.
You see 3 different acts of this guy's life, but 3 different actors as well, who I actually think they did a really good job of casting for that.
I agree,
because they all looked.
I believe that it was a younger version of,
and they all carried themselves almost the exact same way. Like, they were all kind of doing things,
their mannerisms. Yeah, exactly.
So I have to give all 3 actors credit for.
Yes, it's kind of bizarre, but like I again fully bought into this, kind of fully believed it, and they portrayed it so well that you're just like there with him.
And the character Sharon is so strange because, in a way, and you're probably going to disagree with me on this, in a way he's almost a spectator on his own life except for a couple moments.
But no, it's true because they bring that up with how quiet he is, and how he's like, I'm trying to like pinpoint a specific point in the dialogue where they like kind of name him as a spectator within his own life.
But he has quite a bit of agency in this, and he embraces a lot of different aspects of life. So it's a very, like, it's, again, as mentioned, it's very quiet. It's not too many.
He's very reserved,
dialogue.
I guess also.
Yeah, very reserved, but it's still a very rich character who has a lot of depth to it. And even with all of the other surrounding characters that have also rich histories, like Sharon is the focal point of this, and like it definitely carries that. And I actually have to say, particular, the youngest version of him had eyes that told a story. There, like he had a good gaze to him.
Sure, so. No, I agree with all that. And so just weird to cut it up this way, but they all deserve a very strong one because I believe they were the same character, years apart.
Very much so.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and we're on to supporting characters with me. As I broke into,
you covered a lot of it, but go on.
So there are 4 main characters. There are supporting characters. I'll start with Kevin because he is perhaps he's the love interest of this too, but
he's something else beyond that too.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's very interesting to watch the progression of both these characters over their life, because you see, just like three actors portrayed Sharon, three actors portrayed Kevin as well, and you see the development of their relationship over time too. And again, as I mentioned in themes, the similar but different ways they handled their struggle. Paula, his mother, was to see her arc over the course of this from being I'm assuming she was a nurse to begin with, because she came home in kind of like a
it was never really
type thing.
Clear to me what she actually was, if she had a job, what it was.
But I think she was relatively stable at the beginning of this, then falling into crack cocaine addiction.
Sure.
Yeah, you can tell in the houses and the TV and everything. Yeah, like.
And then seeing her at least have an element of
some semblance.
Her saying to Sharon that I didn't love you when you needed it, but I just want you to know that I love you now. It was a very kind of touching moment there, and to see him forgive her for all the failings that we saw. Teresa was great as well, and she did I really like the actress portrayal. She did a lot with what little screen time.
Yes, that's what I was going to say if you didn't say that. Yeah.
And Juan, I like this actor quite a bit. I want to see him. I would like to see him get an Academy Award, but I don't know if it was enough screen time to necessarily warrant the win. I definitely deserves the nod, though. So, but I think he did.
His presence was felt over the entirety of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. And he did. And again, I'm now excited every time I see this actor's name in a work that I'm hoping to go. I'm looking forward to it.
Sure. I mean, like you pretty much covered. Like you said, there aren't a lot of characters, but the ones that are there, everyone did a great job portraying them. I think again, believable. I think is a understatement. But that's the best way I can describe it. These were just true to life characters that I totally bought into, and they all portrayed, their, whatever little background they did come from, or what we were told. I believe that was what they were like.
When Paula was shaking down her son for money to buy drugs.
Yes, that was a harrowing scene.
Yeah,
sure.
Again, but it was intense, but not over the top. It felt very tragic and believable.
They were subtle but intense, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And yeah, I think everyone deserves a great job. Yes, especially Ali, I believe, is the actor's last name who plays Juan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, his first name is somewhat difficult for me to pronounce. I apologize. But no, you're right. He's awesome, of course, in it. But I think I'll bring a little bit more, another touch of levity. I think you read that a la the Signs of the Lamb effect/law of the Academy Awards. If you're on screen for 15 minutes or more, which he definitely was, then I think you can get a supporting actor and perhaps win. And
again, I would like to see him win. I think he is a phenomenal actor.
Yes, he definitely deserves to be in the running, and if he wins, that'd be even better. That's all I can say.
So one for you, Scott?
Yes.
What about you?
One here.
Yeah, I'm going to do one.
All right. And we'll be on to dialogue with Rich.
Yeah, there were no words wasted.
Exactly.
In this movie.
That's the best way to describe it. Good job, Rich. Yes.
It's very hard to pin down my favorite point of dialogue, because everything was made.
All of it.
Yeah, everything was written to build character. From from the moment that Juan shows up to save Sharon from
the bullies.
Yeah, from the bullies, from being chased down, and when he saves him from hiding in that crack house, everything from that point was just set down to help build him up to who he was going to become by the time he was an adult. And do you guys have anything any specific bits that you?
All of it. I have to say, again, similar to Fences, it was so I have something to say when we go to the next question, but relatedly, it was so again relatable, true to life. That every single word they were saying, I believed everything of it, like nothing seemed out of place. They were just having their conversations and also figuring themselves out as people, as characters.
It's interesting you mentioned true to life, because occasionally a true to life work can be lackluster.
Sure, but this certainly was not.
This, I wouldn't say takes the best of the dialogue of life, but it certainly takes some of the most interesting, because it's tragic, dialogue of life.
All right, I like
And
kind of like
puts
that.
it together,
Sure.
and like it really captured like whatever age he was in, and this goes into style as well. But it kind of felt that in a way, Juan's character was larger than life, but it's also seen through the eyes of a child who kind of looks up to him. Where the high school bits, the bully was very believable to what an actual bully sounds like, and like all of this feels both not only like true to life, but appropriate for the age that he is when the dialogue.
All of that
read.
for
I'm
sure.
gonna go one further. Like the dialogue for me, all of the subterfuge for all of the characters, where they were trying to displace any attempts to try to get to know them and what their personal struggle was. Every time you get close, they would like say something, just like push off, like especially Kevin. Kevin's a prime example.
Yeah.
Anytime, like before him and Sharon hooked up, like any conversation they had between the two of them, it was just like, all right, I like you, but
Yeah, that's true.
I'm going to pretend that I don't. And like, especially, when they were younger, when he was cause he knew exactly why the kids were bullying him, which is like a point that Paula brought up to Juan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can tell why those kids are always bullying him all the time. But like Kevin came to him, and like the whole conversation they had that they showed between them was like him trying to like help him get to the point that he was at. It was just like, all right, you got to play this game.
Yep.
You have to come at these kids this hard in order to not get made fun of. And just like his quietness kind of like helped illustrate.
It was almost like its own dialogue,
Yeah.
I guess I want to say.
Yeah, his quietness kind of like definitely helped illustrate how he didn't want to portray himself in a way that like was basically a facade for who he really was.
Yeah.
His, as the old cliche goes, his silence spoke volumes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yes,
Well, yeah,
Silence was like a huge part of the dialogue of this movie.
yeah,
Well, yeah,
and, like,
I-
to its credit, I
I was
think.
actually I was going to bring that up. Ian also mentioned it as well. Just kind of, it's had the flow of just being witness to Sharon's life,
Mm-hmm.
and it had every tragedy, all the humor, it had every kind of experience. Like it had humor at moments where you think everything's going to be kind of like not superficial, but like too good to be true. But like with the tragedy, there was also humor. Like even when he has that moment with Kevin in the end, they kind of like have a he tells him that he's selling drugs, selling hard drugs, and Kevin's kind of taken aback, and he kind of it's a very hard moment before he plays the song.
Sure.
But as he's getting up, he kind of throws shade at him about his grills, like why do you wear those teeth? Like,
Yeah.
But it's that.
So why are you wearing those fronts?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just perfect wording. Everything. It's just, and then the song at the end too. Like the soundtrack to this also is a dialogue in itself.
Yep, that's a good
because
point.
it captured everything very well, and the silence too. Like when there was moments that didn't need a sound, like it didn't need a score or anything. There was silence, or it was very ambient sound.
No, you're right. It knew what to use everything. So, like I said, I mentioned that this is based on a play or adapted from one. Again, it felt like a play style, like exchange dialogue. Even the moments when there wasn't dialogue, when Sharon was just sitting there, like sort of mournfully looking at somebody, or like just the wall or whatever. It was all used perfectly.
I could definitely see that to compare it to Fences, which we also reviewed recently, Fences was a lot more obvious about the play roots.
But all I'm saying, like, I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, like, I could see where it was coming from on that.
No, if you had, like, again though, like Fences, I guessed. This one I wouldn't have guessed about.
No,
so
sure.
Say, but
Either way, one.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this looks like he's getting a 10.
Yeah.
Style with Scott.
All right, so you just sort of brought up something, Ian, and so I was waiting to speak about this. The shots when he was in Act 1, when he was little, if you will, in both senses of the chapter and age. But the shots were as if you were that age. So like everyone looks huge. Juan looks much bigger because when you're a kid, the world looks bigger to you.
Yeah.
Right? So that was an effect that I noticed that was very well used. And then so like in high school, sort of like is equal to like the bully's like maybe an inch or two. The camera's like showing him like maybe just slightly taller than you, but almost even. And beyond that, like the cinematography was just amazing outright, I would say. There were some almost noir shots. Like there's a shot where he's reliving his mother like, screaming at him in their very like narrow, damp little apartment. And that looked really cool. It was almost like a noir shot, like I said. I like that. Look, of course, the moonlight shots, like when it would fade, like we're I think at the end and slightly before that too. Like everything, it was just framed. I think the framework, is the thing that subtly, like you might not notice it, but because it's so well done, it has this effect upon you while you're following these characters' lives.
I kind of want to go back to like that when we were talking about his mother, when it like goes back to his mother screaming about him, like how this showed two nightmares. Well, I'm sorry, this show one dream and one nightmare.
Yes,
for like the middle part and the end, where like the first dream is like him reminiscing about Kevin talking about hitting that girl from behind.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like very obvious that he's like imagining himself in that girl's position, and then you have him like thinking back to what his mother said, where it was like silent before.
Yeah, that's
and then like you finally get like the words that she threw at him before he like wakes up in a fucking start as an adult.
Yeah. No, I mean it's all perfectly, like I said, it was just perfectly done to create that effect and to a great way that it.
I very much liked how after what was it him when he was icing his face down after he got after Kevin beat him up.
Yeah.
And then it like shows him as an adult still using that as a way to like bring himself down.
Yeah, that's right.
As a respectable way to portray himself to the rest of the world.
Yeah, definitely. There's two shots in particular for me that I really loved. There was one where Sharon Black, I guess at this part of the movie, is driving back to Miami. And it's in his car. It's a shot above his car, and it transitions.
I remember.
Like it does a dissolve into the ocean, which is. I was like, that's not only beautiful, and everything, like it's fitting, and it worked totally well because this movie doesn't do that many cuts.
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
that's true.
You know, like you see either dissolves or you see like a good, very well transition, and the one shots and tracking shot, everything phenomenal. Like the first shot as well, where you get introduced to Juan, was an amazing tracking shot.
I agree with all of that.
But the second shot, real quick, the second shot I want to say was part with Sharon and Kevin at the end in his apartment. And you don't realize how close they are standing to each other. And I was like, that's phenomenal.
So I knew this movie would be artistic going in just by like the little information I had about it. I was surprised by how deft of a touch this had. And I think that's the best, it's the best way to describe it. That this is... It's almost painted with a fine brush. If you would.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's careful in perhaps it was going too far to call it like a Wes Anderson type touch to it.
It's not that, but I see why you might say that.
There's a comparison to be made between the way they handle certain shots in here, or how they like are very careful about what they're showing you and not lingering just enough, or
not a single second or shot or cut is wasted in this movie.
Particularly like they do the heavy close-ups constantly of characters' faces. And sometimes, like, not just to give the dialogue like image to
Sure.
the viewer, but also like when his mother is going through the worst of her addiction, like every cut they do have, her face or like her hair is slightly more, even though it's supposed to be the same conversation, she's like changing.
Sure.
It's
all perfect.
It's almost like he's seeing for the first time how messed up his mother is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all perfectly done. Yeah, it was genius cinematography, I would say. And probably, again, this in themes may be the strongest ones, but it's going to get a one to everything. But this one, for me specifically, I fucking love the style of this movie.
Maybe I'm jumping the gun for the Oscar discussion here, but I would say that since I liked Fences' dialogue better and all that, but I loved the stylistic aspect. That I think this is what elevates Moonlight above Fences.
I think I might agree.
I very much agree.
All right, so without further ado, on to recommendation with Louis.
I mean, it's very hard to not recommend this movie. I would do my best to say maybe not to. I mean, it is very stylistic, as we said. It's not avant-garde. It's not. It obviously has things that we've probably seen before, but it does it with a very in its own unique way. I forgot who the director is, like whoever it is, but man,
it does it with a fresh eye.
Yes,
yeah.
Like there were a lot of scenes where like I saw coming from a mile away that were done with like such a new spin
that it felt
was
fresh.
like it felt fresh. Like it was like watching it for the first time again.
Yep. No,
so
I agree. Yeah,
I'd say but I mean, if you want, like, it is honestly right now, this is best picture material. Like this, I don't think I've seen any of the other ones on the list, but so definitely for sure, this is the best picture I've seen.
I get you
for this nomination, but I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know, great acting, great directing, soundtrack. The story's really good. And it's an hour 51 minutes.
Like I said, it's
like,
perfectly paced. Nothing is wasted in this movie.
Wasted, yeah.
Everything is perfectly used. So I, in fact, have seen more nomination films so far, but I think this one, I know it's a strong favorite, and I can see why, and I think I would bet on it to win, and I would like it to win if it does go
I really hope it does.
Yeah, like I like you said,
brilliant.
I like Fences a lot, but I think I would choose Moonlight over Fences at this point after having seen it.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Fences has some stronger points than Moonlight, but
I think overall,
and I think that, again, as you're talking about the fresh eye that went into this felt like a very original movie, even though
it's not
everything's been done
yeah.
already. And
sure.
And I also think has a lot of important themes to it. It's an important movie to see, and it's well done.
And it happens to be a goddamn great movie as well. On top of that,
I give it a full recommendation, and that brings us to the final scores. And if you've been following along, it's a 10 as we predicted, and I think very rightfully so. This has like so many amazing elements to it.
Yeah.
Message,
sure.
Style, characters,
acting.
Absolutely.
Continuous themes.
And it kind of doesn't leave you hanging on anything. It finishes in exactly where you expect it to.
It wraps. Yeah.
It took me by surprise. But I know it sounds weird saying that, but it's. I was like, I don't need to see anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's like, because I remember. Well, as it ended, I said, "Is that it?" But at the same time, it was almost like that's it. That should be it.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it should end. And I would have been disappointed, I think, if it went any further than where it ended.
Yeah, like I said,
I'm adjusting my glasses for a moment. Aristotle was talking about storylines. He's saying that like all stories have stuff that happens before it, stuff that happens after it. There's a strict structure to stories that there's an ending, and yet you don't need to know anything beyond that because that's not pertinent to the story that's being told. So yes, Sharon and Kevin go on to live lives. They might have more tragedies, they might not, but their story, Sharon's story, has been told here.
Yes,
and the closure to it, our closure was perfect.
Now, Stephen and most of you here are not passed out elsewhere. He would ask us, "Is this in fact a perfect 10 movie?" And I say, "Yes, it is."
I can't say that it isn't.
And not only is it a perfect 10 movie, it's a perfect 10 movie in the realm of like what should
Yes.
like in that A level
Exactly.
of movies out there. So,
100%.
So I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer here with Rich Perry,
It's been a pleasure.
Louis Duran,
Have a good night.
and Scott Thurlow.
And I have danced with the devil in the pale moonlight. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.